Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Marty's Recovery Minute. Marty here. Thank you for stopping by. If you've been here before and made it back, thank you for stopping back by. If this is your first time, welcome. We're certainly glad to have you. If you hear something you like, please give us a thumbs up below. Subscribe if you enjoy the content. If you know someone who might benefit from this content, please tell them about us or forward this content to them. Certainly glad to have this message shared with everyone who could benefit from it. Uh, Also, if you feel like leaving a comment below, we welcome comments, love questions. Please feel free to do so. Have a couple of rules though. First off, make sure you're identifiable. We will not respond to anonymous comments. And please do not be mean or hateful in your comments. The motto here is always be kind. If you have something hateful to say, save it for somewhere else. It'll be deleted here. That being said, I want to talk to you for a few minutes about the behavior of alcoholics and addicts. I've mentioned this in prior videos, but I want to kind of readdress it because the behavior is bad. You see this bad behavior, and I can't stress to you enough that bad behavior does not equate to a bad person. As a matter of fact, I find that most alcoholics and addicts, when you get them cleaned up and sobered up, are usually pretty good people. They just have an issue that makes them behave horrible. And you have to understand that those are symptoms of a condition. I mean, think of it this way: um, if your loved one had bipolar disorder and got off their meds and got little nuts and started talking crazy to you and broke something in the house, would you take that the same way that if you would if that same loved one was drunk, acting crazy, and broke something in the house? Most people wouldn't. Most people would make an allowance for somebody, the symptoms. That's not saying the symptoms are nice. That's not saying you enjoy them, but they do exist. And sometimes people need to understand that this behavior you're seeing is simply a symptom of an underlying condition. But there are some explanations beyond simple use that I want to share with you. Number one, the age at which an alcoholic or an addict begins to abuse alcohol or drugs is the age they remain until they stop. I do probably 300 assessments a year, give or take. And I find that the average age at which somebody begins abusing alcohol is about 15 or 16. Marijuana, believe it or not, is about 13. So if I'm between 13 and 16 and I discover marijuana and alcohol, which are the two things young people primarily discover first, if I discover those, uh, my need to learn anything else is over. Young people learn to cope with the world by trial and error, doing something and it going wrong, trying this and it not going right. So if I, for example, find alcohol and I make an A on a test, hey, time to celebrate. If I make an F, blow some steam off, so let's get drunk. If my girlfriend says she loves me, get drunk. If my girlfriend says she hates me, get drunk. Whatever the problem, alcohol or drugs become the solution, and I don't have to grow. So that's why you can see somebody who is 40 years old but acting like they're 16, because in their head they still are. Now, if you can get them quit after a period of time, that emotional growth will kind of hit a sharp curve, and it'll catch up and kind of get close to where it needs to be. But it's important to understand that. Another thing that is very common, it's not 100%, but it's very common in most alcoholics and addicts, is there's some trauma somewhere in that past. There's some trauma somewhere that has led that alcoholic or addict to believe that the world is not quite as safe as I've been told. People are not as trustworthy as I've been led to believe. I can't rely on other people. And so, because of that, it's very hard for that addict or that alcoholic to maintain relationships. So, what happens? They develop a relationship with a chemical the same as you or I would with a person. I mean, think about it. Any of you out there that have children, if someone starts bad mouthing your child, even if you know they're telling you the truth, your first response is going to be, "That's my kid, leave them alone." And that's exactly what you see with alcoholics and addicts. It's the same behavior. They do the same exact thing. When you start talking about the chemical and how it's harming them, they may know you're telling them the truth, They can't accept that you're making fun of their friend or you're belittling their friend. And they will defend it. They will defend it. Um, you know, trauma can take lots of forms. We often think of ACEs or adverse childhood experiences. There's about 10 of them. I'm not going to try to name them all off here, but some of them are physical, mental, and sexual, emotional abuse, uh, witnessing a parent be abused, of the divorce or death of the parents, one of the, like a parent or a caregiver going to jail. So there's several things that can be traumatic to a young person that can lead to this later. So I want you to understand that. Uh, Another thing too is by definition, addiction makes its user selfish. I think I have to have this, and I think I have to have it so bad that my needs begin to outweigh yours, and it turns the user inside out, and it makes them so selfish that they almost can't be dealt with. And you have to understand why that happens. Once the addict or the alcoholic reaches a certain level of addiction, then when they don't use, they start experiencing withdrawals. And those withdrawals, in some instances, are uncomfortable, and in others, can be deadly. And so, if I start sobering up or coming down, and I start hurting, and I get physically ill or sick, I'm like, my brain is going to tell me we're dying, we're dying. And so, when I use the drug, the dying stops. So, very literally, in the mind of a lot of addicts or alcoholics, they see this as life. It's life or death, and they want to live. And you may not need that ring; they need to live. You may not need that $30; they need to live. You may not need that VCR, that DVD player. Dated myself by saying VCR. Sorry, but anyway, you get the idea. Uh, the other thing I want you to understand is people who live like that often develop very low self-esteem and think very little of themselves. And quite often, people who don't think much of themselves don't think much of others. The old saying, you got to love yourself to love somebody else, is absolutely true. If I don't think that I'm worth anything, if I think I'm inherently no good, then what difference does it make how I treat you? I'm no good already. Further, if I don't think I'm any good and you tell me you love me or that I'm important to you or that that I matter to you, I'm going to think either you're lying or you're stupid because I'm not worth loving. How could you say that? So understand that people who don't think much of themselves can't think much of others. Also, when you're talking about long-term chronic use, have you ever noticed that when somebody gets drunk, their personality maybe sometimes gets different? Maybe sometimes they get drunk and they get louder, or they get drunk and they get sold up, or they get drunk and they get violent. When they sober up, their personality reverts back to normal. In other words, they go back to being an okay person again. Well, what happens to the user is if I go a year and hardly draw a sober breath, then you're going to see an exaggerated version of me that really is not me. And so the personality that you're witnessing is not the true personality of the person that you're dealing with. So if you have a loved one who's suddenly in a wild personality shift, that's probably why. Uh, we've talked before about the brain shrinking because of use. And that's an important issue to redress because the part that shrinks the most is the frontal lobe. That's the part of the brain that tells that user, that alcoholic, this is bad, this is dangerous. I'm hurting somebody I care about. I could get arrested. I could violate my probation. I could go to jail. I could harm somebody. That part of their brain is simply not working correctly. And that's why you can see people in the height of addiction make absolutely insane decisions that other people look at and go, God, that's stupid. They're not able to think through it. They're not able to think through it. Uh, and so there are a lot of other things we could cover, but for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it off there. I've addressed some of these in prior videos, but I felt like it needed to be addressed again because people often don't understand what they're dealing with. And the whole purpose of this channel, the whole purpose of being here, is to foster understanding. Um, if, Before I leave, if you think you have a problem with alcohol or drugs, please find a licensed clinician in your area, get a proper, thorough assessment, and get help. Do what they tell you. And till next time, if no one's told you they love you today, I do. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to those you love. You may not always have them. Always be kind. Till next time, God bless.